I live on 10 acres of dry, glorious nowhere just outside the edge of our little town in Arizona. It's not much, just a modest ranch house, a few stubborn goats, and a view that makes you believe in God and open carry. I bought the place with my own money, after 10 years working construction and 2 doing freelance welding. I like my space. I like my peace. And I love my gate. The gate in question is nothing fancy, just a solid steel frame I welded myself, set into 2 concrete posts with a good old-fashioned padlock and chain. It's big enough to drive my truck through, and strong enough to stop anything short of a tank. Or so I thought. Now let's talk about them. Them being the newest self-appointed royalty of suburban tyranny, the Sunrise Hills Homeowners Association. The name sounds like a retirement home for soft-spoken vampires. But no, Sunrise Hills is a brand new rural luxury development, creeping toward my land like a fungus in designer boots. And these people don't believe in boundaries, or manners, or minding their own damn business. It all started with a clipboard. I was out front one morning, mug of coffee in hand, arguing with a goat named Janet who developed a taste for my truck's side mirrors. That's when I saw her, a tall, skinny woman in yoga pants and an attitude that probably cost extra. She stood at my gate, tapping something into her phone, looking at my property like she'd just found a mattress in a river. "Can I help you?" I called, already regretting it. She looked up, smiled in that way you smile at a child who's just peed on your floor. "Hi, I'm Marlene. I'm on the HOA board for Sunrise Hills. We're just 2 plots down. I wanted to talk to you about your gate." I raised an eyebrow. "What about it?" "Well," she said, flipping through papers like she was reading me my last rites. "Your gate is technically on an easement. That's supposed to remain open for community access. It's in the county records. Probably just an oversight on your part." "Oh good. She thinks I'm illiterate and incompetent." "No," I said, sipping my coffee. "It's a private easement. It's for utility workers and emergency services, not brunchers and golf carts." Marlene's smile thinned. "We actually planned a biking trail along the boundary line. It would really enhance the neighborhood. I'm sure you understand how important curb appeal is." "Lady," I said, "you're looking at 10 acres of dust, goat poop, and a shed full of chainsaws. If you think any of this has curb appeal, you might need your eyes checked." She gave a sharp little laugh, like a dog yipping at thunder. "Well, we'll be in touch." And just like that, she clip-clopped away in her pristine white tennis shoes, leaving a faint scent of lavender and litigation behind her. 2 weeks later, my gate wouldn't open. Not because of rust, or because one of the goats had finally eaten the padlock. No, someone had come in the dead of night, dug a shallow trench across the driveway on the other side, and poured concrete into it. Just deep enough and wide enough to block the gate from swinging open. At first, I thought it was some weird prank. Then I saw the little laminated sign stuck into the ground nearby. "Notice, per HOA Regulation 17B, this access point is now closed pending review. Please use designated entrances to the Sunrise Hills community." I read it 3 times before I laughed out loud. Regulation what? Of whose community? I don't live in Sunrise Hills. I don't pay their fees. I didn't sign their stupid little covenant. And yet, here I was, blocked in by people whose idea of rural was a Pinterest board full of fake barn doors. So, naturally, I called the sheriff. Deputy Davis showed up about an hour later, chewing sunflower seeds and apologizing before he even got out of the car. "Look," he said, kicking at the concrete. "Technically this is still under county jurisdiction, but since the HOA claims it's a shared easement, we can't do much until you sort it out in civil court." I stared at him. "So you're telling me I can't open my own damn gate?" "I'm telling you the county doesn't want to get in the middle of it," he said. "It's probably best to talk to a lawyer." I smiled. Not a nice smile. More the kind you flash before you drop a transmission on your own foot just to prove a point. "Got it," I said. "Civil court." Right. What I didn't say was that I was going to talk to a lawyer. But first, I was going to talk to a guy I knew named Pete. Pete owns a backhoe and has absolutely no regard for civil anything. Pete showed up that evening just before sunset, dust trailing behind his truck like smoke off a gun barrel. He's the kind of guy who keeps a cooler of cores in the cab and a tire iron in the glove box, just in case. Salt of the earth. And by that, I mean the kind of salt that makes plants stop growing. Concrete. Huh, he said, peering at the trench with a look usually reserved for dead skunks. That's some city slicker nonsense right there. I nodded. HOA thinks they own the road now. Pete didn't laugh. He just spit into the dirt and climbed into his backhoe like it owed him money. 20 minutes later, the trench was gone, the concrete dumped unceremoniously in a heap near my compost pile, and my gate was swinging freely again. I offered Pete a beer. He took two. Said it was for the stress. By the next morning, the Sunrise Hills Facebook group was on fire. I don't have Facebook, but my neighbor Jenna does, and she reads HOA drama like some people read true crime. She came over with a printout and 3 different kinds of baked goods. "You're famous," she said, grinning like a kid who just found her teacher's diary. "They're calling you that unstable rancher with the assault backhoe." I took a muffin. "What kind?" "Banana walnut," she said. "Oh, and Marlene said she's filing a complaint with the county about property destruction." I laughed so hard I choked on a walnut. 3 days passed. Things got quiet, which, if you've ever dealt with an HOA, is about as comforting as a shark deciding to circle instead of bite. Then came the fence. I woke up to the sound of hammers and cheerful humming. By the time I got outside, there were 3 men in high-vis vests installing a 6-foot-tall vinyl fence along the edge of my eastern property line, right where the gate entrance met the county road. They even had a little plastic sign zip-tied to it. "Property of Sunrise Hills HOA. For resident safety." I blinked. Then I blinked again. Then I laughed so hard Janet the goat ran away. They weren't just blocking my gate. They were trying to erase it. Replace it with a white plastic wall like I was an eyesore on their Pottery Barn paradise. So I did what any sensible, lawful citizen would do. I called my lawyer. Her name's Carla. She's half my height and twice as terrifying. I met her years ago during a zoning dispute where she made a city official cry and call his mom. Within an hour, she'd pulled the deeds, the plat maps, and even an aerial photo from Google Earth with a little red arrow pointing to my land, my gate, and not their damn jurisdiction. "The easement's yours," she confirmed. "County maintained, privately accessible. The HOA has no legal claim unless you let them have one. Can I tear down the fence?" "Absolutely," she said. "Just document everything, start to finish. We're going to court with receipts." But I didn't tear it down right away. Oh no, that would have been boring. Instead, I waited until Saturday morning. HOA meeting day. They hold it in the Sunrise Hills Community Center, a stucco temple to low-sodium potlucks and passive-aggressive rage. I showed up in my work boots, a denim jacket, and my best smirk. I didn't need to be on the agenda. I was the agenda. I waited until Marlene stood up to talk about recent acts of rural aggression threatening our neighborhood's aesthetic standards. Then I raised my hand. She squinted at me like she'd just seen a coyote walk into a Starbucks. "I'm sorry, this meeting is for HOA members only." "That's okay," I said, holding up my phone. "I'm just here to drop off this." I handed her an envelope. Inside was Carla's cease and desist letter, printed on the kind of heavy legal paper that smells like fear and old money. "You've got 48 hours to remove the fence from my property," I said, loud enough for the bingo crowd in the back to hear. "Or I will." With a blowtorch. Marlene flushed so fast and red you'd think someone had unplugged her Botox. Someone in the back whispered, "He's the backhoe guy." Damn right I was. By the time I got back to the ranch, I already had 5 voicemails. 2 were from HOA board members trying to de-escalate the situation. 1 was from a local reporter who'd somehow heard about the fence feud. And the last 2 were from contractors canceling their jobs, saying they didn't want to get involved in politics. That's when I realized this wasn't just a spat over concrete anymore. This was war. So, there I was with legal ground under my boots, a cease and desist hanging over their heads, and an HOA that still thought community standards trumped property lines and actual law. Guess what they did? They doubled down. I woke up Monday to find a letter duct-taped, yes, duct-taped, to my front gate, right under where the trench used to be. Real professional touch. It was from the Sunrise Hills Architectural Review Board, which, as far as I could tell, was just Marlene and a guy named Todd who still lives with his mom, but owns a drone. The letter included a violation notice for unauthorized heavy equipment use within a residential visual zone and demanded I remove all unapproved agricultural elements visible from their neighborhood perimeter. Translation: they wanted me to hide my goats. My goats. I showed the letter to Janet, who responded by head-butting a plastic lawn chair and walking away like she had better things to do. She did. At this point, I was torn between lighting the letter on fire or framing it. I chose option 3, handing it off to Carla. Carla was delighted. Apparently, the HOA had committed what she described as multiple jurisdictional sins, including citing regulations they had no power to enforce on land they didn't control. She started drafting something she called a preliminary injunctive escalation, which sounded like a lawsuit dressed in Kevlar. Meanwhile, I had other plans. You see, the Sunrise Hills folks had a little walking trail that snaked along the back edge of their neighborhood, about 20 yards from my fence line. Technically, it didn't cross onto my property, but it sure looked like it did. And these people? They couldn't stand the sight of anything non-compliant. So I gave them a show. I spent 2 days setting up a goat military obstacle course. That's not a joke. I took some old tires, scrap wood, and a few traffic cones Pete accidentally liberated from a road project and turned it into what looked like a livestock training facility. Then I made Janet and her crew little vests, camouflage vests, with patches that said Rural Defense Unit. The next morning, I timed it perfectly. Just as the Sunrise Hills walking group passed by, sun hats, matching water bottles, tiny dogs straining at the leash, they saw 5 goats trotting through a course like they were storming Normandy. I stood nearby with binoculars and a coffee mug that said, "Not today, Marlene." A woman shrieked. Someone dropped a kombucha. A man shouted, "What kind of farm is this?" Best Tuesday morning I'd had in years. By now, the story was spreading. Jenna, my neighbor and unofficial PR department, had shared a few photos on her social media. One of the local journalists picked it up for the paper under the headline, "Goat Defense, Ranchers Livestock Mock HOA Overreach." And wouldn't you know it, that's when the real allies started showing up. First was Wayne, a retired judge who lives a few miles down the road. Turns out he hates HOAs with a passion reserved for tax fraud and decaf coffee. He called me up and said, "Son, if you want to make this a class action, I'll sign on yesterday." Then there was Denise, owner of a local hardware store. She offered to donate supplies for the cause and asked if I needed any non-flammable fence enhancements. I didn't know what that meant, but I appreciated the energy. Even the sheriff's deputy, Davis, came by. He stood at the fence for a while, watching the goats in formation. Finally, he said, "You know, legally I'm not allowed to laugh. But spiritually, that's another matter." Of course, the HOA wasn't laughing. 3 days later, I got a visit from a man in a shiny SUV with a Sunrise Hills decal. He wore a suit, sunglasses, and a Bluetooth earpiece like he was auditioning for a role in a straight-to-DVD legal drama. "Mr. McKenzie," he said, "I'm here on behalf of the Sunrise Hills Legal Counsel. We'd like to offer a mutual resolution." "Let me guess," I said. "I give up my easement and stop mocking you, and in return you don't sue me into oblivion?" He blinked. "Well," I held up a finger. "Let me stop you right there, because I think you're about to say something very stupid." He tried again. "There's no need for further conflict. You're embarrassing yourself, and you're making the HOA look bad." "Oh, buddy," I said, grinning. "You did that all by yourselves. I just gave you better lighting." He left in a huff, tires spinning a little too dramatically for someone driving a luxury crossover. That night, I sent Carla every piece of correspondence I collected. Every sign, photo, fence post, and violation notice. She replied 2 hours later with a simple message. "We're filing. Buckle up." And just like that, the real war began. Lawsuits don't move fast. You know what does? Gossip, especially when it involves goats, HOA drama, and someone threatening to call local news during a zoning dispute. By the time our hearing date rolled around, the whole county knew about the fence war. Half the town was taking bets. Local diner had a chalkboard special called Goat Cheese Justice Burger. No idea what was in it. I didn't ask, but I did show up to court wearing my best denim jacket and clean boots. Carla warned me to look reasonable, which I interpreted as don't wear the I plead the second t-shirt. Fair. Marlene was already there, sitting with 2 HOA board members and a lawyer who looked like he ate spreadsheets for breakfast. They had binders. Actual color-coded binders. We had Carla, a weathered manila folder, and the confidence of being right. The judge, mercifully, was not new. In fact, it was Judge Ramirez, who once fined a city planner for trying to zone common sense out of existence. I liked her immediately. The Sunrise Hills lawyer opened with the usual HOA word salad. Your Honor, the defendant's gate violates visual cohesion standards and impedes the recreational expansion of Sunrise Hills, which holds a binding set of community guidelines. Judge Ramirez held up a hand. Is the gate on HOA property? Silence. Then a nervous throat clear. Technically no, but is the easement under HOA jurisdiction? Again, not exactly. Then what exactly are we doing here? I swear I heard Carla purr. They tried. Oh, they tried. They brought in aerial maps, photos of unsightly livestock, even a short video of Janet chewing on a flag. Patriotic, if you ask me. Their best argument? That my goats created a hostile aesthetic boundary for the residents of Sunrise Hills. I wrote that phrase down, framed it later. Then it was Carla's turn. She laid out the original property plat, proved the easement was legally recorded, privately maintained, and never included in the HOA's domain. She submitted evidence of trespassing by HOA contractors, unauthorized construction on private land, and harassment in the form of bogus notices and Facebook witch hunts. Then, because Carla is Carla, she brought up the county tax records, which still listed my land as agricultural with full access rights, including the gate. Your Honor, she said calmly, not only did the HOA violate my client's property rights, but they did so knowingly, repeatedly, and with clear intent to intimidate. We're asking for damages, an injunction, and court costs. The Sunrise Hills lawyer looked like he was going to throw up his binder. The ruling took 10 minutes. Judge Ramirez didn't even look tired. The HOA has no legal claim to the easement, no jurisdiction over the property, and no authority to install structures on land they don't own. The court orders the immediate removal of the offending fence and signage, a formal apology to be submitted in writing, and grants the plaintiff restitution for legal costs and property damage. She paused, and I'm adding a restraining order. The HOA board is prohibited from contacting the plaintiff directly for any reason. Go through counsel, or don't go at all. I could have kissed her. Marlene, meanwhile, looked like someone had just revoked her yoga privileges. After the hearing, a local news crew caught me outside. Small-time outfit, but they had a camera, a mic, and a thirst for petty drama. So, what's your next move? The reporter asked, grinning like she already knew the answer. I looked straight into the camera. Well, I said, first thing I'm gonna do is build a proper welcome sign. Something tasteful, subtle, maybe with horns. The apology letter arrived 2 weeks later. It was typed, signed, and printed on HOA letterhead, though someone had clearly spilled a little wine on it. It read, to Mr. McKenzie, the Sunrise Hills Homeowners Association would like to formally apologize for any inconvenience, misunderstanding, or structural intrusion caused during our recent interactions. We respect the court's ruling and will comply with all outlined directives. We hope for peaceful coexistence moving forward. I read it aloud to the goats. Janet shook her head. I took that as a formal endorsement. Of course, that should have been the end of it. But then Jenna came by with another Facebook post. Marlene, it seemed, wasn't done. She'd launched a new committee, Community Perimeter Watch. And their first order of business? Monitoring border interactions with non-member residents. Apparently, I was now a border interaction. Let me be clear, I didn't want revenge. Not the unlawful kind. I wanted closure, which just happened to look a lot like a 1,200-pound metal goat statue. But we'll get to that. First, let's talk about the sign. See, after the court ruling, Carla gave me one last golden nugget of advice. You're well within your rights to post signage along your property. Just keep it legal, not necessarily polite. So I welded up a little number with some reclaimed steel and the help of a local art teacher who owed me a favor after I fixed her chicken coop last summer. The result? A 10-foot-tall gate sign that read, "Private property, not part of Sunrise Hills, and never will be. Surveillance in use. HOA Karens will be trespassed." It was beautiful. Clean welds. Solar lights. A small American flag mounted on the top, gently flapping in the breeze like freedom whispering, "Bite me," in Morse code. Jenna cried when she saw it. Pete offered to throw a barbecue. I accepted. Meanwhile, the community perimeter watch was spiraling. Marlene started making weekly incident logs. I know this because someone leaked them. Spoiler, it was Todd, the drone guy. He'd had enough. Highlights included suspicious goat behavior, flag sign causing emotional discomfort, unidentifiable livestock sculpture being erected. Yeah, that last one was about the goat. You see, a normal person would have stopped at a sign. But I am not a normal person. I am a man who welds vengeance. Over 2 weekends, I worked in my barn with my tools, a few beers, and the emotional support of classic rock and Janet chewing a lawn chair nearby. The statue that emerged was, well, majestic. 12 feet long, 7 feet tall, made entirely of scrap metal, horseshoes, and one repurposed lawnmower blade for the horns. I named it Liberty Hoof. I positioned Liberty Hoof right along the fence line, facing Sunrise Hills like a patron saint of "Don't Try Me." At night, I spotlighted it with LEDs that changed color depending on the day. Marlene called the sheriff. Sheriff Davis came out, took one look, and said, "Well, it's on your land. It's not anatomically offensive, and I'm pretty sure it counts as art." Then he asked to take a selfie with it. A week later, the final act played out at the Sunrise Hills HOA monthly meeting. It wasn't public, but a video leaked. Todd again. Legend. It showed Marlene trying to call an emergency vote to petition the county to restrict visual pollutants adjacent to HOA borders. Her motion was met with a long pause, a few coughs, and then the HOA president, who up to this point had been a silent beige blob, said, "Marlene, maybe we've made this worse. It's just a goat. Let it go." The look on her face? Satisfaction distilled. Apparently, a bunch of residents had started complaining, not about me, but about her. People were tired of the lawsuits, the fees, the constant drama. By the next month, Marlene was voted off the board. No clipboard, no title, just a disgruntled yoga warrior with a grudge and nowhere to wield it. Since then, life's been good. The fence is gone. The gate works. The goats still train on the obstacle course, mostly because Janet likes the attention. I get the occasional look from a Sunrise Hills jogger, but now it's more respectful fear than contempt. That's fine. I'm not here to be friends. Still, sometimes I catch a few of them taking photos of Liberty Hoof. Art transcends, I guess. Oh, and remember Todd? He moved out, bought 5 acres on the other side of town, started raising chickens and growing peppers. We talk shop sometimes. He said something to me the other day that stuck. "You didn't just beat the HOA. You gentrified rural revenge." Damn right I did. And if Marlene comes back with another rule, I'll be here with a fresh pot of coffee, a welding torch, and zero patience. Thank you for being with us. Please share in the comments where you are watching from and whether you liked everything, and see you next time.